Number one, they never involve cash, right, which we talked about. And every adjusting entry has one balance sheet and one income statement account. So if you use cash, then you know you have to have it. If you use an expense, you know you have to have a balance sheet account. If you use payable, you know you have to have an income statement account. All right, so the next thing that we're not going to do, but you would do, is you would prepare an adjusted trial balance, all right? That is a part of your working papers, but we're not going to do that, okay? That would come, if you look at your working papers, you have, shortly after the problems we just did, you have an empty T accounts, and then you have a completed T account, all right? So we're not going to do the trial balance, but I'm going to show you the trial balance in just a minute and how we did that from the actual T accounts. And so when you're looking at, I'm going to pull it up right now, actually. So here are the empty T accounts that you would have saw in your working papers, all right? And then right after that, here's the solution. And I'm going to make them smaller so that you can kind of see all of them, because we're not really looking at the actual numbers. I guess I got to make it smaller over here. It's not going to let me make it smaller. No, it's not going to let me make it smaller. So, okay. So there's all the numbers. And let's just take a couple. Prepaid rent is $8,000. Notice property, everything for the assets, including property, plant, and equipment, is in this one column. Then we have liabilities in this column, stockholders' equity, and then we go to revenue, and then we go to expenses. Here's the handout that then goes ahead, and this is where you would have done the trial balance. All right? The trial balance answer, on the other hand, oops. Thought I already had this open, because we're going to do something from this due to time. Oh, I hate when it does that. Come on. All right. Trial balance answer. Try not to. Is right here. Notice, as I talked about before, here's all the assets, then the liabilities. Notice accumulated depreciation is right here, because even though it's listed with the assets, it's a credit. Then we list all the liabilities. No retained earnings right now. There's our dividends, because it carries a debit balance. Our two retained revenues, all of our expenses, and then there's our total showing that it equals each other. All a trial balance does, an unadjusted trial balance, this one's an adjusted trial balance. The difference between this and the one we did earlier is now it has our adjusted trial balance, our adjusted entries on it. So again, that came from here. So supplies is $800, just as an example. Notes payable is $30,000. You come down here, there's supplies, $800, notes payable, $30,000. Those numbers are just a direct translation down. So does anybody have any questions on how a trial balance is done? Just taking those numbers directly in. Because that, I think we got. What I want to make sure we get is the financial statements. So when you're looking at our trial balance that we just did, one of the things I kind of pointed out on the unadjusted trial balance, now that we're dealing with the adjusted trial balance, right here, That is our income statement, revenue, and all of our expenses. We can take that directly from our adjusted trial balance and we can do our income statement. Revenue, expenses, right from here. Revenue, expenses. That gives us our net income. Then we can go do our next statement. Now remember, this company just started. Here's our retained earnings. In this example, here's our dividends. Both are 0. So the only thing we're going to have on it is net income. So bring on the net income, bring on the next statement. There we go. All right, so beginning retained earnings, 0, plus net income, 800, minus dividends, 0, gives us ending retained earnings of 800. Notice for the month ending. Then everything that's left from retained earnings up is cash, which is the majority of everything. Revenue and expenses, even though there's quite a few things, everything ends with revenue or the word expense. Okay. Then retained earnings and dividends go on the statement of retained earnings, and then everything else goes on the balance sheet. And we're going to come to the balance sheet next. And then remember the date is at, right? There we go. The date is at, and we start at the top. We got current assets. We list those that are less than 1 year. This is called a classified balance sheet. Total current assets. Then we just list all of our long-term assets. And if they have any depreciation, it's listed right underneath them. So we have 2. We have one with accumulated depreciation, that's equipment. And then we have one that's called accumulated amortization. That's when we have an intangible asset that's being amortized, okay? They are both listed right underneath each other. They can be in one column if you want, and then no balance, or however you want to list that. I don't count off for that. And then you total it. Then we list all of our liabilities. Did someone have a question? I just heard a whole bunch of dinging. Total current liabilities. And then notice we come down here under stockholders' equity. The last thing, right? Common stocks right there. And then this comes from our statement of retained earnings. Then you got to remember to do the very last thing. You got to take liabilities plus stockholders' equity to get the number here that matches. So the next couple of slides are going to show kind of how it moves around, just like I did. Your current assets, your non-current, your retained earnings, and then, whoops. So, does that seem to make some sense how you pull those numbers in? Or does that sound confusing? What does that sound like? Make some sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
How about from a couple besides those two? There's still a couple more of you guys. Does that make sense? The next thing on the on the problems that we're working is to do, hang on, my mouse isn't moving, there we go, is to do the financial statements. So see, if you're looking at it, it's the income statement, the statement of retained earnings, and the balance sheet. Now I have, and that's what I'd planned on giving you, was I can leave, it's completely up to you guys. I can leave this here and you can work those, or I can put a copy of the trial balance online and I can give you the totals for the income statement, statement of retained earnings, and the balance sheet. And then you can work those maybe when you haven't been on the call for 2.5 hours. It's completely up to you. You're going to see these in your homework again. So if you'd like to work this problem before you go into your homework, I can put this out there for you to work it when you know what the answers should actually be. What would you like to do?